Carrie. Welcome to the Scenic Group podcast. I am so excited to finally have you here because what you don't know, dear listener, we had the whole world against us in getting this recording, this conversation set up. Like after 3 years of avoiding COVID, it caught up with me, and I was just like, I cannot. Either the brain fog or the coughing, like, this makes no sense to podcast this way. But we're all alive and well now. So, Harry, this is always the first question for anyone who's coming on the show. Can you please briefly walk us through your story so people get to know you? How you started, how you got where you're today? Like, what were your pivotal moments?
Sure. Well, first of all, I am so happy to be here and that we've worked out the life kinks at this point. Knock on wood. And yeah, so I am a stage director, and I have been kind of pivoting. I like to call it evolving into branding, and I've been doing public speaking coaching since, the beginning of my stage directing career as an acting coach. And so I started to work with people on telling their story. And kind of coincidentally, I also spoke to a colleague and was writing some curriculum for a class that I teach on the subject on personal discovery storytelling. And she suggested that I turn it into a book. And so I decided to do that. The name of the book is Origin Story. And the caveat to that is that I was looking for a way to bring my stage director artistic self together with this work that I do for different populations, for military populations, for business executives, and not really wanting to stay exclusively in one area or the other. And so I really was trying to think about how my life and all of my different qualifications brought me to this point where I can help people to tell their story. And whether that's on stage or whether it's for a keynote speaking experience or preparing for an interview. And I think that that really ties into the idea of personal branding and representing yourself. And so the final piece of that, which really motivated this particular subject in the book, is that when I was getting ready to move across the country with my military husband at the time, he's now since retired, and my mom gave me a couple of boxes that had been in her basement, and I was like, oh, fantastic, more boxes.
Yeah,
too.
We all need those. Thanks, Mom.
Where you like put them in a corner, you stare at them, and they stare back at you, or you feel like they're staring back at you.
Slightly judgmental.
Yeah. Exactly. So I finally opened them to, in preparation for the move. And I found a play script that I co-wrote when I was in about 5th grade, age 10-ish, called Little Red Riding Hood Says No to Smoking.
Ooh.
Yeah. So some things really clicked into place at that point of, wow, I really am a theater artist. I have been my whole life, even though I know you're a detour expert. There's been so many detours along the way. And it was the final piece that I felt like I really needed to complete my origin story and to complete that, connecting the dots of my journey from very early years to where I am now, and all of the questions I had for myself, and the decisions that I had to make along the way. So that's kind of where I'm at in a nutshell at the moment. It's a quickly developing story, if you will.
Yeah, and the beauty is, right, like as you said, like, so this is the current chapter, and we don't know if we're, I don't know, sitting together again in a year, then we have new chapters to talk about.
Right.
I have so many questions. Like I have to get my head sorted. Like, stage director, I mean, I so love this that you came full circle with the boxes and you're like, dang, like I've always meant to be theater. It always has meant to be theater in some way, or And I mean, storytelling fits into that. It's just like a different form if you collect people's stories.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think, like, what, as you, this is like a question for the you who gets the stories out of people.
Yeah.
What has been like skills or questions so people feel safe or comfortable enough to tell their story? Oh, I lost audio. I lost your audio. This is very odd. Can you hear me? Okay. Can you do, it looks to be on your end, but yeah, I cannot hear you. What is going on? I no idea. Wait, maybe if I try putting it, I'm going on a different mic. Can you say something quickly? No. Oh, okay. I cannot hear you at all. I'm also wondering if it's my setup. But
Yeah, we're
then you wouldn't
testing.
hear. Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah.
Ah, okay. Then something was off. Then maybe it
Okay, let
really
me
was
try one more
my.
time. Something switched.
Oh, okay. Then my mic probably got confused.
Yeah, 1 minute.
Yeah, then probably my mic got confused and like, no, what's going on? Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. Okay, cool.
If the quality is okay, my mic, I don't know, something happened and it switched to my system weirdly. I don't know. That's very strange.
I don't
If
know.
this sounds
Sometimes
okay for you, I'll
I'd
just
say so,
continue.
and otherwise my podcast editor's gonna smack me, just like that. But we'll be fine. We have like we're recording like two separate audio lines, so I'm sure she can.
Let me try one more thing, which is to plug this directly and see if maybe it's the adapter. Yeah. Well, yeah. Sorry about that. It's not.
No worries. Like I can hear
Get my
you.
mic at all.
I have a good crystal hear audio, so we're just gonna roll with that.
Okay.
So
Okay. Yeah.
okay. So I got like the first question that came to my mind is for anyone who this is gonna be super useful. Anyone who is in like copywriting or also like brand and design or any way they have to get the motivation and why the reason why people do certain things out of them. So in your experience, when you talk to people about their origin story,
Yeah.
what were like the most useful like skills or tools, questions that you had to make people feel like comfortable and safe enough to share their story?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the book is in 3 parts, and the first kind of walks you through the elements of your story. And then the second section is called Discovering. And that is where I ask the questions, right? So these questions, you know, people could journal in them, or you could hand them to a friend and ask, you know, kind of a Q&A and do a voice recording if you feel comfortable with that. But in my case, when I'm working with a client, for example, it really comes down to those objectives. And, you know, I teach a class where the focus is personal discovery storytelling, which means that they are digging into their own lives. And I say that the 3 required elements are where I came from, where I am today, and where I'm going, right? So finding that where I came from means different things for different people. It doesn't necessarily mean like going back to your childhood, because some people are like, nope, not going to do that.
Yeah, I'm not gonna open that box of Pandora. Thank you very much.
Right. So it could be just the beginning of your career. It could be a couple of years ago when you started that new degree or something like that. So it's such a personal perspective of where they think their journey might have started. And then we can always ask more questions about taking things a little bit further back, or doing some more digging or research, for example. And so, yeah, it's really a process of challenging yourself to think about things that maybe you haven't thought about in a long time, think about them in a different way, and then see if we can start to tilt the kaleidoscope a little bit, like I call it.
Oh, yeah, that's a beautiful expression. What is your, like, give us a taster from the book, please. What is your favorite question you have in there that's kind of like forcing you to tilt the kaleidoscope?
Well, so what my most standard question that I've used so far, which is was the genesis for a lot of the interviews in the book, is just to name 3 favorite activities. You want to try it?
Dear Lord. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Kind of like, are we talking hobbies, or are we just like talking whatever kind of activities?
Whatever comes to mind right now. What are your 3 favorite hobbies?
Oh,
or activities?
Yeah. Okay. My 3 favorite activities. I love to read. I love to tickle my son because he has this gorgeous laugh. And I love to play the fiddle, the violin.
All right. So then after these 3, again, they're just in the moment, right? There's no right or wrong answers. We're just
or I would have said something different. Like,
so like you said before, it's a story. It's your story for the moment. It's not the story of your life, because that's going to continue to change, right? Okay. So then the next part of that exercise would be then, can you think of a core memory related to one of those 3 activities?
Yeah.
So it could be anything from a first time experiencing something. It could be a monumental moment. Yeah. Would you like to share a little bit with us?
okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, I'm also switching to the mic to I don't know what's going on. I have no idea.
I didn't want to stop you because I didn't want to.
It's fine. Then I don't know. I don't want to mess up. I don't know how the recording is gonna be, like, if you can hear me. So
well, maybe we should have you tell it again then.
Yeah. I will tell it again, and like my apologies, Lily.
I didn't knock on wood hard enough, apparently.
No, me neither.
Ourselves.
It wasn't. I don't know. I've never had.
Me neither.
We shouldn't have, like.
I haven't done that many podcasts, but this is the first time. Yeah.
and I don't know, probably get a new cable or something. This is, I don't know, whatever. Well,
okay.
anyway.
So just start with telling me your story.
Yeah.
About.
Yeah, the memory, right? Yeah, so one of the core memories I always have when I pick up my violin is I get transported back to that one time there was this amazing session. We played until like 4 or 5 in the morning in this like remote town in the west of Ireland. And it was just like, I don't know, everything then comes back together and it just feels like, oh yeah, this is it.
Absolutely. So really that exercise, super simple, right? What's your 3 favorite things and then a core memory associated, but all of a sudden you're making these connections with the origin of that, or an inciting incident, what I call the inciting incident that sparked that moment of connection with whatever that activity was, and something that was important enough for your inner voice, your intuition, whatever, to record that and tell you, do not forget this, right? So it'll appear, I'm not sure why, if we need the reminder, if it's comforting, right? But it does appear. Yeah. And so one of my fascinations is with these core memories and how they set building blocks for your future activities, right? So you just said, when you pick it up now, you are still attached to that memory, that experience that you had whenever that was, right? And so what I do is then I look for opportunities to say, okay, so you had that first experience, you have this core favorite activity. Does it appear in your life now? Are you doing it now? Right? And then how can you maybe bring that activity more into your life, make it more present in your life? And in some cases, the activities will be something that shows up in their job that they have now, but it's not where they started. Like, for example, I have a friend who is an actor, spent many years as an actor, then went into the hospitality business, working for Hard Rock restaurants. And her core memory that she told me about was going on a trip with her family to the World's Fair, right? And guess what her job is now, after being an actor, after working in the restaurant business?
She's like manager of those fairs, or like something.
She does
agent, or like
yes, you're right.
I love that.
She creates educational tours for people who maybe a little bit later in their life have things on their bucket list and dreams that they have not fulfilled yet, right? So it was super interesting. It wasn't like, okay, tell me about your job now and let's trace that back. It was like, no, let's think about these things that are really important to you and see how they show up in your life today. And almost every single time they do. And so then it's kind of filling in the dots and connecting them after that. What you do with that information is then up to you, right?
Yeah, and I suppose it's that kind of information that, I don't know, I always call it like onion information, right? It always reveals like one layer at a time. Whenever that time, like you cannot really control when that time is, but every time you're kind of like look at it, you're like, oh, it does mean something different now. It's like you peeled off a layer and you're like, oh, okay, now it means this to me. Like the deeper, I don't know, you go or you understand yourself. It's
absolutely. And so we don't know exactly how that's going to show up. I mean, one of my favorite phrases is to say we can't predict the future, we can only prepare, right? Yeah. So if we allow ourselves to follow these instincts, intuitions, and our interest in these activities, you don't know when it's going to show up, when you might be asked to play violin in a group, or to like do something creative with it. I don't know, maybe
I'm a really shitty player, so like this is really just like a fun project, but again, I was also like, how does this show up? And I feel like it shows up, and like I am creating these like I'm trying to bring that sense of community I've experienced. I'm trying to bring this online, like kind of like that experience. And surely, like I'm in a creative space. I'm a creative service provider. Like there's just many forms on how I live creativity for sure. So it kind of does tie in. So that's really interesting. Yeah, I love that. And I assume like there are also like a lot of people where think about their activities and like that they haven't done in a while, or they have enjoyed as a kid and haven't, and kind of like,
or we're told that they should focus on other things.
Oh yeah, right? Yeah. This is not going to make you money. You should focus on something real or whatever. Yep. Yeah. Like, and I love that you say like with time, then you're gonna like connect the dots of your origin story. And like how, so you have all these questions and you kind of like try to see the pattern that's emerging, and you're connecting the dots, and you then help people to shape their personal brand based on the origin stories that comes through those dots. Correct me if I'm like talking gibberish.
Yeah. In a way, it's funny because there's not really a word or a good description other than personal branding, right? Which people are like, I want to be a brand, and I don't want to sell myself. I don't want to do the marketing, right? But you have a brand, right? If you ask your friends, if you ask colleagues to describe you, they will. Yes. And so,
and most importantly, it's probably what they tell you when you're not in the room.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So my goal is to help people to take control of that.
Yeah.
Right. So if music is a passion of yours, to not hide that part of your personality from the other areas of your life, because I think that it's more interesting when these qualities intersect, when you give people the opportunity to know you in multifaceted ways, instead of keeping your role as a parent completely compartmentalized from your professional life, for example, or keeping your interests, because when you open yourself up, it's balance, right? I'm really working with the notion that so many people feel like something is missing from their life, and they're not sure how to figure out what that is. Or maybe you do know what it is, but you're not sure how to incorporate it in larger, more significant ways into your life. And so the first part is to figure out what those things are. And that comes also with some time to consider your values, how you've changed, what your interests are, what the world looks like now. Look at us, here we are. Technology has changed, right? The things that we prepared for and the way our mind has worked in the past is not necessarily going to serve us now, when you might be able to do another podcast interviewing musicians, for example, or that there are ways to combine and move forward so that you are pleasing yourself and your own measures of success, instead of listening to those other ones, which probably sent you on some detours, and maybe now you're ready to like get back on track. Right?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? I mean, it's so interesting what you said, like, probably others that sent you on a detour, right? Like your parents who meant well, who thought like you should get like, I don't know, become a doctor, get a law degree or whatever. Yeah. And then they look at me, we're like, now we have a sociologist in the family, what are we going to do now? And like all those things. And you're like, well, it's just, I don't know.
Right. It's their opinions, and then society's opinions, your community, your culture. There's so many layers of that, and they do not help us to figure out what makes us happy, which you've probably known for most of your life, or the signs were there, but maybe you didn't have the opportunity, the resources, the time. There were other priorities, right? That came into that conversation as well. So it's not easy to just follow that straight path from your inciting incident to fulfilling your full potential, if you will.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's when do you, in your experience, when you're working with clients, when is like that pivotal moment, like what kind of star constellations or planet constellations are coming together when they're realizing, oh, that, let's call it niggle, like that something is like,
Yeah.
when does that like become so strong that they're like, okay, we gotta, is it really that the question of I feel I'm missing something? Is this it? Like a place of dissatisfaction?
Yeah. So that chapter in the book is called Stormy Weather.
Love it.
Right? When the like
Stormy
storm is building, right? So you have some choices. You can kind of pay attention and be like, I'm gonna avoid that storm. Let's deal with
Yeah,
what's
not gonna address the storm right now. Thank you.
yeah, you can ignore it and just like deal with the consequences, right? But it is that rising tension that like that getting to a point where you feel like you have to make a decision or you really want to make a decision. And I also introduce another idea of kryptonite, which is, you know, that thing that you cannot stand, that you cannot be productive, you don't think clearly, that this is just something that you cannot deal with. And sometimes people's work environments become that for them, or a boss, or their home life, whatever it is. So you've got this, you know, stormy weather, lots of different things that are building perhaps that you might need to like untangle. And then you also have these anti-values or things that you decide for yourself. Look, I am drawing the line here. This is my limit. I'm not going to work with these types of people in these types of situations, or I'm going to put myself first, you know, in these ways, right?
Yeah.
And so that, I think those are the signs, you know, but we don't always listen to them right away. It sometimes takes a long time to untangle because we've gotten ourselves very tangled up in our own lives, right? Oh, I can't make that change. I can't move to that other city because of these reasons. I can't, you know, say no to that job because of these reasons. I can't change my career because of these reasons, right? So you have to get yourself to a point where you make a decision about what that future possibility is. And I think that sometimes identifying your origin story or identifying the authentic desires that you have had can really help to clarify that goal for the future.
Yeah, I agree. And especially it can help you remember, like, I feel a lot of people, for a lot of people, like the, oh, I can't do this because of, or like it has a lot to do with they need space first to kind of like change into the personality, into the character of the person who does those kinds of things, right?
Yeah.
To become the person who moves cross country for whatever kind of reason, or the person who quits corporate to pursue their jewelry business, whatever. And like that, for a lot of those people, it just takes time, because we don't know how this new person, like, how does she do things. So going back to your origin story is a really cool way to kind of like approach this, of being like, okay, how coming back to those identities you had or that are still with you, be like, hey, I am actually that person.
Yeah.
Was it kind of like all along, and kind of remember again?
Yeah. Well, and you know, it took probably decades for you to get tangled up, right? So it's not going to happen overnight to just,
That's true,
like,
but we always have unrealistic expectations.
right? And my encouragement is not to I don't like to focus on reinvention as much as evolution, because I talk about really taking the good and moving forward with it. I mean, you've had these experiences, don't dismiss them completely, right? It might have felt like a detour, but if you re-examine them, they have set you up to do exactly what you're doing and where you are right now, right? It might not have been that the job was great, but you might have learned 5 skills that now you use in different ways to do something else that you really like, right? And so our perspective on these detours and these events that have happened in our lives are really helpful when we think about moving on and evolving and making some changes, because we are who we are. We're not going to just snap our fingers and poof, be a, a new person.
Yeah.
But
Entire industries would not work. It would not make money if this would be a thing. Yeah.
yeah, but recognizing that these things are important to me and I would like to focus more on these things and less on these other things is definitely a really healthy way to think about that evolution, and making small changes at first, which then lead to conversations and lead to maybe other opportunities.
Or just new paths. I love that you said about the detour, like, and that it's, and that mindset switch of like, hey, you know, that detour, I had to take it because there was something for me to visit there, to learn there, to experience there. And I might not know yet what it was good for, but it will reveal itself.
Yeah, that's it. That kind of segues right into something that you and I spoke about when we first met, which was speaking from your scars and not your wounds. And I think that we can help, you know, Brene Brown speaks about this advice that was given to her. And if we look at the positive and the negative of the situation, not just to be like, oh, what did we learn, and dismiss everything, right? Because we want to retain, you know, oh, hey, I don't ever want to do that again, and here's why. I mean, the more clear you can be on that, the more you can avoid it in the future, right? But if you can find the growth that happened or the positive outcomes of that, then you can turn a wound into a scar, right? You can turn that detour into something that hurt. You know, there's a mark there, but that you're not suffering from it because you recognize how it has helped you to get to where you are today.
Yeah, you healed, you let the wound heal. And I don't know, I think it was also like, I'm sure Glenn Doyle also talked about it at some point. This is like really interesting when you look at it from like, a lot of us are service providers, and I also, like, I know a lot of people listening are coaches and healers and in the healing business, and it's always interesting, like you like that saying, right? Like you preach from the scar and not from the wound. Like you have to kind of like let it heal first,
right?
And then from a place where it has healed, and not of like of a place of raw pain, you're gonna share your story.
Right.
So, and then like having some time, having the crucial element of time between that to kind of like let it heal and let it become a scar. And that brings me to another interesting question, because we have talked about like origin stories and like detours. So I'm sure you have a pretty interesting like concept or idea of time, in the sense of, you know, like, as you said, like, we're so impatient. We always want to, it took us years to get ourselves into this tangled web of identities. And now we're like, okay, I accept, I see my dots, I got my origin story. I want to be untangled now. Thank you. Like, how do you approach that?
Well, I think that it's a constant evolving process, right? Because time continues and our story continues to renew itself and reveal itself, right? When I made decisions when I was going to college, for example, and the college I went to did not have a theater program, not a minor, not a major, neither. So, you know, I don't know if that was conscious or subconscious of like, put that away. That's not something serious, right? And
I'm a grown-up too.
Right. So, but at that time, and still now, we go to school to get a job. but that job is 4, 5, 10 years in the future, right? We don't know what the future is going to hold.
Yeah.
We can't predict it. So why not encourage people to be more in the moment and follow their instincts and follow their interests? Because that is going to lead you to happiness and a job in the future. Because, for example, I work as a theater professor in a bakery. What?
Yeah, people would be like, wait, what? Excuse
Wait,
me.
what?
Bakery?
Right?
Did you say bakery?
I did. I said bakery because a Jesuit priest started this program as a fellowship. The bakery is a model of a small business to work with military retired veterans, spouses, and caregivers in order to help them think more like an entrepreneur. They get a certificate from Georgetown, and I teach them personal discovery storytelling, how to tell their story in part of that class. Now, could I have predicted when I was 18 years old that I would be teaching virtually from my home in California to people all over the United States, personal discovery storytelling as a theater professor in a bakery? I mean, if you just think for one moment about how many different elements there are that no one can predict.
Yeah,
right?
and they all have to align in a way. Yeah.
Right. So when you talk about time, I think we spend so much time thinking about the future and trying to imagine and trying to predict that we miss the clues that we are giving ourselves. We're not listening to ourselves. Right?
Yes.
We are listening to everyone else, trying to figure out how to be successful in the future, instead of trying to figure out how I can be successful today. What are the elements of my day that need to be present for me to feel successful and being able to move forward? Right. So my perspective of time has changed a lot. I mean, maybe it's being a mom too and trying to be present with my
That
kids.
does mess with your concept of time.
Right. But also in trying to get them to be present and not to think about, I mean, yeah, it's fun to say, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you know, that's more of a reflection of their interest in the moment, not their future thinking, right?
Yeah. Like, I don't know if that's a thing in the States, but when I grew up in Europe, and we had these like friendship books like that you would pass around to your classmates, and you would write, there were questions like your name, your favorite pet, your favorite animal, favorite color, all those sorts of things. And one of those questions would be, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah.
Do you remember what you answered to that kind of question when you were a kid?
No, I don't remember exactly, but I do remember spending a lot of time doing theater and thinking about performing and creating. And I wrote little kids' books with paper cutout beluga whales. And, you know, like when I look back, I mean, I think that the question is relevant up to a certain point before you start having all of those rules imposed of like, no, you can't because
you cannot because
right. So that's part of it. But then the other part of it is just looking at what you were spending your time doing, right? What were you excited about? What were you chasing? What classes did you want? What extracurricular activities did you want?
What came effortlessly to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then thinking about how that matches up with what's going on in your life and seeing if you can figure out how to regain some of that excitement and, you know, some of those sparks that you had before.
Ooh, that's so juicy. So, and I'm curious about another thing you said before, like, okay, we spend way too much time on like trying to predict the future, trying to prepare for the future and all those things. Yes. And kind of like, how can we make sure that how can we just have like, feel more successful in the now, which, yes, key. So I'm curious, what is your definition of success to you personally?
Well, so that's another complicated Some of this didn't make it into the book because I think it's a little bit more complicated, and I work with my clients on it, where we're talking about measures of success. And what we're doing is we're looking at the different areas of our life. And so, for example, my different areas would be as a partner, as a mother, as a theater artist or stage director, as a personal branding coach, right? So as many different areas as you feel are significant to your life, it's looking at measures of success in each of those areas, right? So what you want to do is you want to look at those measures of success in each area, but you also want to look at those measures of success to make sure that they're coming from you and not somebody else, or not.
Yes, they're really your KPIs and not the things you think you should be doing or should be having to be successful.
Exactly. So, where are those ideas coming from? Are they coming from your family? Were they coming from the way you were brought up, from your parents? Or are they actually what you believe to be measures of success in your own categories, right? And then what you have to do is remind yourself in those moments where like imposter syndrome shows up or something else, because you're only concentrating on the one area. For me, stage director, for example, I can easily look and say, oh, but my colleagues are artistic directors here and they're directing on Broadway over here, and I'm not doing that, right? And yet I have 3 or 4 other major categories of competing interests that also have measures of success. I cannot just focus on one, because then the measures of success in the others will fail. Does that make sense? So like,
yes. And it kind of, it's nice that you kind of already segued into my next question, which is like the thing of like, okay, so if we have all these different segments, can we have it all? Can we really have it all?
Well, there's a really great video. I think it's Shonda Rhimes's My Year of Saying Yes to Everything. And one of the first things she starts off by saying is like, you can't, if you're going to go to this award ceremony, you're going to miss bedtime, or you might miss a birthday, or you might miss, right? And so again, what I think is that if you are clear about your measures of success, then it's going to help you to make those decisions. Right. So maybe you can't have it all, but you can balance it all. Yes. I think by saying, in this case, I am going to miss this birthday celebration, and we will have another one at a couple days later. You know what I mean? That some compromises start to be made. But if you don't know what your measures of success are, then you're constantly going to be feeling like you're failing, because
it's like you're not, whatever you're doing, it's not good enough.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so for a friend of mine who I was coaching recently, she said that, she's an opera singer and she's been doing a lot of commercial work, and she was so excited because she was working on this project and she got to be home for bedtime. And I was like, that is a measure of success. You need to write that down. Right. And so when you're feeling like, oh, maybe I didn't win that award because I was single and didn't have any kids and other responsibilities that you have in your life, not to judge any of those, but to say you can't compare these apples and oranges, right?
Yeah.
That your unique circumstances, I think we fall into this trap of thinking that we are just like everyone else, and that in order to be successful in this way, we have to follow these guidelines and these steps. I mean, for example, in the social media world, right? I mean, how many advertisements do you get about these 5 steps to do it this way?
Yeah. But right? Like that's why we're doing the Scenic route, people. That's why we're doing the Scenic route. That thing, those 5 steps will not work.
Well, they don't. Yeah, they don't work because you are unique. And guess what?
Yes.
Are you a morning person? When do you work? What's your schedule like? What do you, what are these
other small kids? Do you do you want to? And that's like fine, right? Like, I mean, I recently had a client, and she was like, well, I really want to do this new program, but I know it will take time, it will take a lot of time, to invest upfront, to do kind of an online course thingy. And I'm gonna miss like bedtime and things. And I'm like, yeah, like then again, like ask yourself, like, am I willing to like maybe put the bedtime on the back burner for like a month or two? And can I be present in other ways?
Right.
Or do I say, no, okay, I have to find another way of, this is my like non-negotiable. I want to do bedtime. Then maybe it means dropping a client or two so you can free up more time during the day, or like how, yeah. And I mean, you can navigate, and I mean, that's a blessing and a curse to some.
So,
like you can navigate it as however you want.
yeah. So what you're bringing up is the idea of negatives, right? So you're saying like missing bedtime is a negative, right? And I believe that there are very few actual negative things in our lives, right? So again, measures of success, like, is this one of your measures of success? Then for you, it might be a negative. But if it's someone else's measure of success, then in your situation, your agreement with your family and all of the making the nuts and bolts work, timeshare, right? I look at it as opportunities for my partner, my husband, to spend time with the kids or their grandma or whoever, that this is a positive opportunity for them. And I might feel a little bit guilty about it, but that doesn't make it negative. That doesn't make it a bad thing. I might feel like I'm missing out a little bit, but if I turn it and say, yes, but this is a positive thing for them for these reasons.
Yes.
Right. Then it changes the perspective on how you're spending your time.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good point, that I kind of like feel like this is like the one where we're ending our conversation, sadly, like the negative, right? And I just had this conversation with a friend recently, like last week actually, and like she was, and I'm like, the way you talk about things matters so much.
Yeah.
And I asked her, look, tell me like 3 things that were like amazing or good or about that happened to you last week or you're grateful for. And the first thing she said, oh, my daughter didn't get sick. And I'm like, yeah, but do you see what you're doing if you're saying my daughter was healthy, my daughter was well? Do you feel the different ring to that?
Right.
And I love that you pointed it out in me, because like my therapist is always like, now can we turn this into a positive? And I'm like,
well, yes. And it's speaking from a place of confidence instead of a place of fear, right?
yes.
Because the negatives, when we talk to ourselves, and I love that you brought up, self-talk, because the book is about changing and controlling your self narrative, right? Because it starts with the way that we talk to ourselves.
Yes, it
absolutely, 100%. I can't wait for you to read the book. I think
I'm excited. Yeah, we're gonna link it in the show notes. When is it coming out?
It'll be published in May, so I'm turning in the final draft this weekend. So
yes, awesome. That's amazing. Oh my god, I'm popping a virtual coffee for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm super excited. We'll link it in the show notes as soon as when you have, like, you can send it to me. We'll link it in the show notes. That this is going to be super excited. I'm definitely going to read that. And I always have one last question, and this is also about reading. What current book are you reading? What book are you currently reading? My English today, I swear.
Well, I always come back to Stephen Pressfield's The War of Art, not the Art of War, but The War of Art, because, he talks so much about resistance, and he's influenced me quite a bit just in how changing your mind and, it's like people who, don't like to exercise, and they're like, don't give yourself a choice. It's not a choice. You just do. You just move forward, right?
Yeah.
And so his thoughts on resistance are really interesting, and always, as I've been kind of pushing to the end of this project, it's been helpful to think about.
I can imagine. Yes, I do see that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hey, Carrie. So where can people find you online if they want to hang out with you? Where you can be found?
Sure. I'm on all social media. Well, I think all. I'm not sure what all means anymore, but the major ones at Carrie Klewin, Klewin. And yeah, and I have my own website, which needs to be updated because this book is going to change a lot as far as how those projects are.
Well, that's a good moment to be
Yeah.
like, let's address website changes.
Absolutely. But you can contact me yeah, either through the website or, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, all of those. So
Perfect. We're going to link all of those in the show notes. So, Carrie, thank you so much for talking us through the origin story today and for being on the Scenic podcast. Thank you so much.
thanks, Jennifer.